I took it upon myself to dedicate days and days of time to study the books, read up on resources, and wait a minute. This is the same video I did last time that you're probably thinking or typing in the comment section right now. Well, if I recall correctly, that video was from the topic of only using Blue Lock facility players. Therefore, I have free reign to do this video topic once again, but with the use of pro players, featuring any of the U20 World Cup players, and of course any adult pro players we know currently, all the while including the top 23 Blue Lock players as well as Nagi as a sure requalifier after B-side. So in this video today, I'm going to be making the best Blue Lock player in the entire series. So stick around, hit that like and subscribe button for more Blue Lock content, let's aim for 500 likes on this video, and also be sure to join my Blue Lock Discord if you're interested in interacting with a Blue Lock community like no other. To start, we first need to take a look at the full stat summary sheet. So I quickly grabbed Isagi's old stat sheet, which has the translations from Japanese to English provided by Hoshi801_. There are 43 parameter substats to discuss, and yes, this is called a parameter chart, and considering these parameters were not made for every character, and even more so for the detailed stat sheets, as only 3 characters were covered, which is a huge missed opportunity, I will be basing it off of players going into areas that best fit the attribute due to a speciality, or just assume whatever number that they would have in this slot is the best we got after our limitation comes into play. So the rules for this construction of Blue Lock's best player is that I'm limited to the amount of uses I have for each character, and I want to emphasize that a few more times during this video, because I know some assholes are going to skip the intro and miss the context of this challenge. I'm limited to a total of 2 uses per player. This seems reasonable as 3 felt like too much, and only having 1 eliminates a lot of potential to truly make an objectively best new character for the series. I've also taken feedback from comments when I first discussed this last, and I will be going through some substats to explain what they actually mean, because they are poorly expanded on with the use of only 1 or 2 words. We'll start with some of the obvious stats and then proceed to go in order afterwards. First of all, top speed and acceleration just have to go to Loki. Not sure how debatable that is, but it's what he specializes in, and the only arguable stat that I could believe to be more useful is reaction speed, but since it's based on how fast someone can respond to a variety of instances, I believe for that substat it's better to go with someone a lot more animalistic. Next, I want to allocate either Raichi or Tokimitsu to stamina. A contentious opinion I had last time was putting Raichi over Tokimitsu for the spot, and whilst I get the argument is unlimited versus immeasurable stamina, this time round thanks to the intro rules I've established, I don't have to argue a reason why I'm picking Raichi over Tokimitsu, since Tokimitsu has been eliminated. I'm not sure if there's an objectively better character for stamina than Raichi, but considering he's one of the only characters whose stamina is mentioned in such a high regard, he is my pick. Alright, let's get the goalie stats out the way. We don't have too much to work with, but we do have another goalkeeper who saved a vital strike from Isagi, that being the French U20 goalkeeper. Catching a goalkeeper reaction speed goes to Gargamaru, and it's not even close. You could argue that save should go to Gargamaru, but considering his recent training was to specifically catch machine-launched baseballs, I believe this is way more suited. Plus his reaction speed is insane, and there are multiple panels to prove that. For save and blocking, I'll place Renewal from the France U20 team, and for goalkeeping, positioning, and coaching, I'll be putting Fukaku, as he's the last remaining competent goalie to include for right now. Of course, everything will change as soon as the new Gen 11 goalie gets revealed or some shit. For opposite leg precision, this has to go to Noah. Before you say it's a wasted slot to put the world's best striker here, he most definitely excels in this area more than anyone else by a mile. The fact of the matter is, he's trained to be the world's best striker, and he's also naturally ambidextrous as part of his main core strength. So this is not even up for discussion. You may think balance should also go to Noah, but I've actually looked into this, and natural ambidexterity doesn't necessarily mean you're automatically good at balancing, since balance relies on a well-developed vestibular system, whilst ambidexterity relies on bilateral coordination. So I would actually give balance to Kiora. This is some critical feedback I've taken on board from the last time I did this, but at the time and even now it's genuinely hard to ever think of Kiora when he's barely appearing in the manga. But yes, undoubtedly with his breakdancing, skateboarding, and the fact that he has superior physicality for his size, gives him impeccable balance and a very strong core. He just needs to be the size and bulk of a player that doesn't get bodied like he was Tokimitsu against Adam Blake. Let's talk about jumping next. This is where my favourite character Agi gets to talk his talk for a sec. Considering height doesn't always necessarily translate into jump height, it's hard to pick someone like Ayu when I bet someone like Aiku is a more capable jumper. Height does assist how much you can extend in the air, but what we are measuring isn't height equals best jump, we are measuring distance off the ground equals best jump. And Argy is not only absurdly tall, estimated around 6'4" or taller, but stupidly precise and flexible, which gives him a slight edge. Ryu has also been outperformed by the likes of Silver, so why do I think Argy is more capable than Silver? Well, I believe it's a variety of jumping capacity, likely knowing from experience how to also use that jump power and efficiency not only to defend, but also, as we see in the manga, to assist strikers up front. But here come the flurry of comments saying Bunny is the right choice. We don't know enough about Bunny personally. Sure, one of his only feats that we've seen him doing is scoring mid-air, and his name is Bunny, so that should heavily imply impeccable jumping feats. But Argy has been vocally stated to have immense jump height, and with that comes an advantage in aerial duels due to his flexibility. Just give me this one until we see more Bunny feats, please. Let's do some kick-related substats now. For kick accuracy, I selected Rin, since one of his weapons is quite literally called perfect kick accuracy, and very strong arguments in my last video as to why it should have been the case last time. For Baru, I believe from my last video, the large majority of people preferred me choosing Baru over my pick of Kunigami for the penalty stat, and I could be amenable to that, even if Baru has still not kicked a ball in almost 3 years at the time of writing this, but that very well could change in a couple days from now. Another obvious one is also putting Rin in the curve stat, which of course means shooting and curving the ball shot course, which Rin has done countless times with ease, whereas someone like Kaiser needs a specific ball setup to do his Magnus shot. Let's switch over to technique to keep on top of obvious picks. For trapping, we definitely should give this one to Nagi. I mean, like, come on. For tackling, we have to primarily look at the Ubers players in the NEL, and I can say someone like Ryu is exceedingly good for their reach in stealing the ball from opponents, but when it comes to slide tackling, you'd also need the experience to not get fouled, so I believe Don Lorenzo works well here, so I can preserve the likes of IQ for the heading stat, since A, he's the character we've seen do the most accurate head feats, and B, he's pansexual. Dribbling should go to Lavinho, and feinting in my eyes should be best suited for Don Lorenzo, if not for the fact that it's built off of his unorthodox dribbling style. So I think to pair Lavinho's feints with his dribbling is best, as he would definitely be most capable of knowing how he would execute his feint with his style of dribbling. But I wouldn't blame you if you believe characters like Lorenzo or even Karasu or Baru could work better. Alright, that was quite a few of the obvious ones. From now on, let's go in substat listing order, starting with the kicking power, which I will rightfully award to the world's best striker, Noah Noah, because I'd be dumb not to. Short passing I'll have to give to Charles, just off the back of him being a high-level midfielder, and the executions we've seen off the likes of Hugo and Sai just don't support any short passing feats. However, for long passing feats, I have to give that to Sai, due to more examples of this option being shown, and it's just a really reliable option. For volley, I will be rewarding this stat to Shido. I will have an immense issue with anyone who argues against this allocation when we have a whole section of awareness related stats to go through, so shut it. Isagi is really good at his specific volleys, but he is not as athletic as Shido to pull off some of the absurd shot angles and showcases of raw talent that this demon has done. For long shot, this is Kunigami. He's the only character with a confirmed goal shooting distance over 40 meters, that combined with Noah Noah's shot power will make for an insane character. For free kick, once again, I'm putting Sai Itoshi here. Then for centering, since it's valued for someone passing the ball from the sidelines towards the middle of the field, I would be willing to give this spot to Hiyori for his high speed control and similar passing to Sai Itoshi, as well as Hiyori often being placed on the wings, so his experience is more valuable than picking a better midfielder who I've never seen kick a ball from the sidelines to the centre. That finishes off our kick category, and we can instantly make our way over to the physical category. Agility is where I struggled a bit. It's where the user can change their acceleration and direction of speed with ease, kinda like those cone drills you'd see in training, making use of both your sharpness and changing direction, and how fast you can do it. Last time I put Shido in this category, and no one disagreed with this choice. I'm not saying he's the best, especially out of the pro players, but no one is necessarily mentioned for their agility feats, and I would only see Loki as a massive contender for the slot if he wasn't already used twice. Jiggly is another contender, but considering the strain of his ACL, he may be at risk of doing this consistently, as we saw him almost break in racing against Himizu's feints. But from the recent games, I'm gonna give this spot to Onazi. I know his amazing mobility doesn't reach the exact same definition of agility, but he is an acrobatic player through and through, using quick and reactive movements to play both as a key defender and a striker when his team desperately calls for it. For kinetic vision, I'm giving this to Kaiser. This is based both on his meta vision and the fact his fast leg swing speed is a surefire weapon that would present him as someone who acts on his vision faster than most players in the series. Plus, having two eye abilities also can lend an immense hand in this argument, argument, a spatial awareness user and hyperfixator. Reaction speed, as I said earlier, would go to someone a lot more animalistic, and considering Shudo moves based on instinct, why wouldn't he be amazing for this substat? For power, I will give this to Chris Prince, as he is someone who has one of the best physicalities in the series, not to mention his muscle mass is off the charts, completely overwhelming Kaiser and competing with Noah as the second best striker in the world. Moving on to our mental category, for composure I will give this to Karasu, but I can see the argument for Hiyori, but since Hiyori is not always seen to be so sure of himself, he barely misses the mark compared to Karasu, who's willing to be the person to accept change for the sake of his team, and already knowing his place in the world as someone with no talent in his own words. It's hard to say nowadays that Hiyori is more of a composed player than the recently asserted number 2 for Blue Lock, even if Ego rejects that whole concept. For assertiveness, I will gladly give this to Baru. I gave this to Isagi last time, but considering Isagi's other uses, I need to keep him for those other stats. But Baru can actually be argued as better, since he's naturally assertive. He's already respected as the king by his teammates, and even gave someone like Snuffy a hard time to convince him to try his philosophy, purely from Baru's own raw mentality of self-made assertiveness. For condition stability, I picked Baru last time, but since Baru was the best fit for assertiveness, and with Isagi off the table, I believe Karasu once again comes into play to fit in this position, all for having stable, calm and analytical capabilities, allowing him to assess threats, and shifting anchors on the pitch. He can snuff out a team's core weakness, but also understanding the heart of teams, as well as knowing when there's an imbalance in his own team structure. For attack awareness, we are finally going to use Isagi. Outplacing Kaiser in better use of metavision, plus priding himself on being a striker is well fitting. Not to mention he is a space investigator, so if he was paired with these other abilities, there's no doubt he could tear Yugo into pieces, even if he's oh so destined to be a midfielder. Defense awareness I'll give to IQ because duh. For coordination, it best fits those with synchronicity of accurate body movements and technical demands. I decided to give this one to Yugo. Debate with me all you want, this guy is extremely proficient as an attacking midfielder, as we've seen him completely capable of dribbling and scoring, plus he undoubtedly has spatial awareness, control both physically and mentally, fast unpressured quick decision making, so on and so forth. And finally, for tactical comprehension, this one rightfully belongs to Mark Snuffy. Yes, this was finally one of the two I was saving him for. He's the best overall player in the world, so we are definitely going to find uses for him. Last category is technique. Ball control should go to Bachelor. Direct play is interesting as it relies on using a minimal amount of passes to get the ball upfield to eventually score a goal. You'd probably say Isagi with the use of the word direct alone, but it just doesn't fit him not to rely on others, therefore the minimal pass requirement just doesn't fit him. Here we should have a player like Chigli. I put Hiyori here in my last video, but once again he's just getting replaced tenfold by refreshed definitions, as Chigli from point A to point B is far more valuable than the likes of Hiyori, especially involving minimal passes. Chigli's speed makes up the distance in getting to the attacking third as quickly as possible, and I am well aware that Lorenzo was known for getting the ball to bypass the midfield straight onto the front lines, but he's kind of a showboater, plus I don't think he's faster than Chigli, nor as experienced for crossing. For positioning, I'll put Isagi as his role of space investigator comes into full effect. He has a great goal sense, spatial awareness, use of players' blind spots, sometimes undetected off-the-ball movements, metavision, meta burst points, and understanding of Blue Lock's concept of luck, which whilst it's likely other pro players have access to these skills, none of them have been confirmed to have all of the ones that Isagi has. And finally for playfield vision, which is a horrible name for a substat as it doesn't expand on much, I know it involves comprehensive understanding of positions, formations, and tactics, so who better than the executive of Ubers and a very safe but also extremely good option of Mark Snuffy. And there you have it, what is supposed to be the best Blue Lock series player that I can build. And to clarify once again, I was only able to use a character a maximum of 2 times for these substats. I will very briefly say that players, whilst not being my choices for certain stats, does not make them bad players. They are likely top 5 or even top 3 contenders in certain areas, so me not selecting them is not to say that they're bad. We know damn well Ugo is levels above Isagi, so me using Ugo once may seem like a disservice, but it's about what Ugo does better in areas where Isagi does worse, rather than Ugo being better than Isagi in every category, and that extends to Ugo also not being the best in every aspect he beats Isagi in. And overall, this is also a construction of a best player based on my perspective and understanding of players and substat definitions. I didn't have too many inquiries from the last video I made on this subject, aside from like 3 substats which were unanimously disagreed on, so I hope I made up for the mistakes of that video, and also hope for similar success in everyone's eyes in this one. If you want to see how I took on making making the best Blue Dot player using only the facility players, check out the video on screen right now, alongside some of my other videos including topics like what if scenarios. Thank you all so much for watching this video, and until next time, peace.